Beneath the Italian sun, on the banks of the Tiber River, stands a city unlike any other, a place where myth and memory blur, where shepherd boys raised by wolves became kings in legend, and where dusty hills gave rise to an empire that ruled the known world. This city is Rome, the eternal city. For nearly 3,000 years, Rome has been the stage where history's greatest dramas have unfolded. Gladiators clashed in its arenas as roaring crowds filled the Colosseum. Emperors paraded in triumph through marble arches, their victories etched in stone. Popes crowned kings within St. Peter's Basilica, while artists painted visions that would forever redefine beauty. But Rome is more than monuments and ruins. It is an idea of power, of law, of civilization itself. From the Republic's proud senators to the emperor's iron rule, from the rise of Christianity to the Renaissance rebirth, Rome has shaped languages, religions, and nations. It has fallen only to rise again. It has crumbled, yet endured. And even today, in the modern age of skyscrapers and satellites, Rome still captures the imagination of millions who walk its cobbled streets and gaze upon its timeless wonders. But how did it all begin? How did a cluster of huts on 7 hills grow into the mightiest empire the world had ever seen? And how did that empire's legacy survive long after its collapse? The answers lie in a journey across centuries, from wolves and kings to emperors and popes. This is the complete history of Rome. Every great city has its origin story, and Rome's begins not in dusty records, but in myth. According to legend, the twin brothers Romulus and Remus were born to a Vestal virgin and the god Mars, abandoned as infants by the river Tiber. The boys were saved by a she-wolf, who nursed them until a shepherd took them in. As they grew, so too did their ambition. When the time came to found a new city, the brothers quarreled over where it should rise. The dispute ended in blood. Romulus struck down Remus and gave his name to the new city, Rome, 753 BCE. But legend soon gave way to reality. Rome began as a small settlement on the 7 hills, strategically placed along the Tiber. It was first ruled by kings, many of them influenced by the neighboring Etruscans, who brought urban planning, engineering, and religious rituals. Under these monarchs, Rome grew from a village into a budding power. Temples rose, markets bustled, and Roman society began to take shape, a society that already valued discipline, hierarchy, and the seeds of something greater. Yet, beneath this growth, simmered tension. The kings held vast authority, and not all Romans were content to live under monarchs. By the late 6th century BCE, discontent erupted into revolution. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, was overthrown after a scandal involving his family sparked outrage. In his place, a bold new experiment was born, a republic, a government by the people, guided by elected magistrates and a senate of Rome's elite. The monarchy had fallen, but Rome's true story was only beginning. For with the birth of the Republic came wars, conquests, and betrayals, and a city that would soon outgrow its hills to challenge the world. The fall of the monarchy in 509 BCE unleashed a bold political experiment, the Roman Republic. Power was no longer in the hands of kings, but divided among consuls, elected officials, and the Senate, where Rome's aristocrats debated, schemed, and shaped policy. At its heart was a delicate balance. No single man could hold unchecked authority. Yet even in its infancy, the Republic was not a democracy for all. The common people, or plebeians, had to fight for every scrap of political voice, and fight they did. Over time, plebeians gained the right to elect tribunes, officials who could veto unjust decisions, slowly carving a place in Rome's hierarchy. This tension between classes defined the Republic, a constant push and pull between the elite and the masses. But while Rome argued within, it expanded without. Wars with neighboring tribes forged discipline and resilience. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome clashed with a rival across the sea, Carthage. These epic struggles, the Punic Wars, would decide the fate of the Mediterranean. Rome's legions fought Hannibal's war elephants across the Alps, endured devastating defeats, and yet, with relentless determination, crushed Carthage. Victory brought wealth, land, and slaves, but also corruption. Senators grew rich, while soldiers returned home to poverty. The republic that prided itself on equality was rotting from within. Ambitious generals like Marius and Sulla seized power through military force, breaking the very system they swore to uphold. The republic had triumphed abroad, but fractured at home. And from this turmoil would rise men whose names still echo in history. men who would turn a republic into an empire. By the 1st century BCE, Rome was a republic in name, but power belonged to those who could command loyalty and armies. Amid this storm, one figure rose above all others: Julius Caesar. Brilliant, ambitious, and fearless, Caesar's career began in politics, but his fame was forged on the battlefield. As governor of Gaul, he waged campaigns that pushed Rome's frontiers to the edges of Europe. His conquest of Gaul was brutal, yet unmatched. Villages razed, tribes subdued, and Caesar's legions hardened into a force loyal not to the Senate, but to him. Rome celebrated his victories, but the Senate grew fearful. For Caesar was not just a general, he was a man who defied limits. The Senate ordered him to disband his army. Instead, in 49 BCE, Caesar made his fateful choice. Crossing the Rubicon River, he marched on Rome itself. It was an act of open rebellion, one that plunged the Republic into civil war. Against rivals like Pompey, Caesar's genius triumphed. By 46 BCE, he emerged as Rome's unrivaled leader, dictator for life. He enacted sweeping reforms, debt relief, calendar changes, and expansion of citizenship. But his power came at a price. Senators whispered that Caesar aimed not to preserve the Republic, but to crown himself king. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, the whispers turned to daggers. Caesar was struck down by his own peers, murdered beneath the Senate's gaze. Rome cheered the end of tyranny, but instead, they had unleashed chaos. For in killing Caesar, the senators thought they saved the Republic. In truth, they paved the way for an empire. The assassination of Julius Caesar left Rome drenched in blood and uncertainty. Senators believed they had restored the Republic, but Caesar's death created a power vacuum. Into this chaos stepped his young adopted heir, Octavian, alongside Caesar's loyal general, Mark Antony. Together, they hunted down the assassins, defeating Brutus and Cassius at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE. But Rome was not big enough for two masters. Octavian and Antony turned from allies to rivals. Antony, enthralled by Cleopatra of Egypt, dreamed of ruling east and west with her by his side. Octavian, meanwhile, positioned himself as the defender of Roman tradition, accusing Antony of betraying his homeland. Their rivalry culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, where Octavian's fleet crushed Antony and Cleopatra. The lovers' suicides left Octavian the undisputed master of Rome. In 27 BCE, Octavian took the title Augustus, becoming the first emperor of Rome. Outwardly, he preserved the old institutions of the Republic, but true power lay firmly in his hands. Under Augustus, Rome entered the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of relative peace, prosperity, and expansion. Roads, aqueducts, and monuments transformed the city into the shining jewel of the ancient world. But behind the marble and glory lay an unspoken truth. Rome was no longer a republic, but an empire born from ambition and betrayal. Augustus had secured stability, yet he also planted the seeds of dynastic rule. And while Augustus forged an empire that seemed eternal, the centuries ahead would test its strength, from mad emperors to foreign invaders, and a faith that would challenge Rome's very soul. With Augustus setting the foundation, Rome reached its dazzling height. Under emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, the empire stretched from the sands of North Africa to the misty isles of Britain, from the Rhine to the Euphrates. Its roads connected continents, its legions enforced order, and its cities flourished with trade, art, and culture. The Colosseum, aqueducts, and grand temples proclaimed Rome's power to the world. Yet beneath this grandeur lurked cracks. Corruption festered in the Senate. Armies pledged loyalty to generals rather than the state, and emperors rose and fell in dizzying succession. Some were revered, others, like Nero and Caligula, infamous for madness and cruelty. Amid this turmoil, an unexpected force began to spread: Christianity. Born in the backwaters of Judea, it was at first a persecuted faith, its followers thrown to beasts in arenas or crucified as enemies of Rome. But persecution could not stop its message of hope, salvation, and eternal life. By the 4th century, under Emperor Constantine, Christianity transformed from outlawed sect to the empire's spiritual core. The Edict of Milan in 313 CE legalized the faith, and within decades, Rome itself became the capital of Christendom. The old gods faded, and a new order took shape. But while faith united millions, Rome's borders crumbled. Germanic tribes pressed from the north, Persians from the east, and internal strife weakened the empire's heart. And soon, the unthinkable would happen. The eternal city itself would fall. not once but again and again, as Rome's glory gave way to centuries of darkness and rebirth. The decline was long and painful. In 410 CE, the unimaginable happened. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, sacked Rome. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City was violated by foreign hands. Rome survived, but its aura of invincibility was shattered. Just a few decades later, in 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed. The Western Empire was gone, leaving Europe fractured into kingdoms. Yet Rome itself never truly died. While the West fell into the so-called Dark Ages, the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, thrived from Constantinople for nearly 1,000 more years, preserving Roman law, art, and learning until it too fell to the Ottomans in 1453. Meanwhile, in the West, the memory of Rome endured. Kings, popes, and emperors claimed its legacy, calling themselves heirs to the Roman tradition. The Renaissance brought Rome's glory roaring back. Ancient texts were rediscovered, classical art revived, and Roman ruins inspired architects of a new world. By the modern age, Rome had transformed into the heart of the papacy, influencing billions of Christians worldwide. Even in today's world of skyscrapers and satellites, Rome's shadow looms large. Our laws, languages, architecture, and even political ideals trace back to its legacy. In 2025, as modern Rome thrives as Italy's capital, it remains a city where past and present intertwine, where the Colosseum stands beside bustling streets, and history whispers around every corner. Rome may have fallen, but in truth, it never ended. It became an idea, one that still shapes the world we live in.